Should we do background stuff? For the background, if you want to have a look that's kind of like, let's take a look, like this over here. See how it kind of looks soft and almost watercolor-like? I have the same thing on my shirt that I'm wearing here, and I'll show you. So if you take a look at the pug that I'm wearing here too, see how cool that is? What such a neat effect playing with that. So you can try different things. You can use rubbing alcohol if you have it. That's what I used originally for the pug, which worked quite well. But because a lot of us don't actually have that around, I will show you how it works just with water. All right. So I'm just going to take a brush, which I find to be really easy. I mean, you could use a wet cloth or a spray bottle or something to put the water down, but I find that a brush is nice because you have a little more control over what you're putting and where, and then you can use it to kind of push things around. So I'm just going to dip my brush in here, get it wet, and then just sort of paint some water onto the shirt. So all I'm doing is I'm just trying to get the shirt a little bit wet so that when I put some color down, that marker will kind of run a little bit. So let's try and see what happens here. So see already, it's not just a solid color. I'll show you the difference between just a solid color. Let's see. Okay. Whoop. So it's not super solid color. You can already see that it's kind of spreading around and sort of lighter. So let's see if I can even, yeah, I can even push it around with my finger. See, it's all starting to spread out. So if I add a little bit more color, I can kind of go crazy. Do, 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 do. Maybe I'll add, what's a color that would look nice with blue? Turquoise maybe? Turquoise and purple? I think these will look nice. So let's try it. Just going to scribble, kind of overlap a little bit. La, la, la. Go up to here. One thing I will suggest is that you do the background first, or at least don't do it close to something that you've colored nicely, because if you get something like this wet, then that's going to start running. So I suggest doing the background first and let it completely dry before you start adding color to the other areas. Otherwise, it might all start running together. Hope that makes sense. Okay, so I'm going to get my brush again, and I'm going to go over it again. This is where you can just really get creative and try to be free with it. Don't try to control the color too much. Just have fun with it. So you'll see, you can kind of rub it, push it around. I might use my finger. It's kind of fun, hey? Yeah. So see how the color now is starting to blend together and soften? Yeah, it's cool. So I can even go back over top of this and I can start adding just like little dots. And you'll see that because the surface underneath is still wet, they'll actually start to spread out a little bit more. So you'll get things like in my pug shirt, you'll see these little dots here where they started to kind of spread. That's a neat effect too. You can even rub those if you want to soften them a bit more. See? Yeah, this is pretty fun to play with. Or if you want, you can wait for that to dry and then go over it like this. Another thing that I like to do is I have these acrylic paint pens, or you could use actual paint too, actually. But I have these paint pens or paint markers, and I have a silver, and I found that the metallics cover really well. So I even added some little silver dots here, see, once it was dry, and the gold covered over it nicely once it was dry as well. But I mean, even if you go over some areas like this, once it's dry, you can actually color over this, and that bottom or under color will kind of disappear too. So doesn't matter if you're too messy or if you go over the lines. I'm not too worried. Like you can see that this is starting to run over the lines here. That should be totally fine. By the time it's dry, I can color over that, no problem. So right now it's still wet. You can see that the shirt here is kind of a different color, but once it dries, that'll go back to white, and it'll just see this nice watercolor effect that's left behind.